Meet the Mets, meet the Mets. Step right up and greet the Mets. Bring your kiddies, bring your wife. Guaranteed to have the time of your life, because the Mets are really socking the ball, knocking those home runs over the wall. East side, west side, everybody's coming down to meet the METS Mets of New York town. Oh, the butcher and the baker and the people on the streets, where do they go? To meet the Mets! Oh, they're hollering and cheering and they're jumping in their seats. Where do they go? To meet the Mets! All the fans are true to the orange and blue, so hurry up and come on down, 'cause we got ourselves a ball club, the Mets of New York town. Give 'em a yell, give 'em a hand, and let 'em know you're rooting in the stand. Come on and meet the Mets, meet the Mets. Step right up and greet the Mets. Bring your kiddies, bring your wife. Guaranteed to have the time of your life, because the Mets are really socking the ball, knocking those home runs over the wall. East side, west side, everybody's coming down to meet the METS Mets of New York town, of New York town.
What's up, Mets fans? Welcome back to Talking Mets. It Rob with another Mets Hot Stove Live right here on the channel. Hopefully everybody is doing okay. Before we get started talking about the latest news around the New York Mets, don't forget to please hit on that like button, hit on that subscribe button, and of course, all the topics for tonight's show is on the side of where I'm sitting right now. So check out check out the all the topics. We're going to talk about the Rule 5 draft that's in December, but there's some players that the Mets were trying to protect, and a big one in particular that is one of the Mets' top prospects we're going to talk about as well. So hopefully everybody is doing good. Hopefully everybody is calming down about all these rumors that are starting to happen and all the craziness that's been going on, and the Yamamoto is supposed to be posted in the next day or two. So that's going to be interesting, because I think that Yamamoto is going to sign rather quickly, because I think there is a base of teams, like a handful of teams, that will be willing to pay the top dollar for him and the posting fee. And we know mostly the favorites of the teams. So all right, let's see. Let me just check the comments really quick, guys. And don't forget, guys, just say what's up in the comments. I'll give you a shout out. Daniel's here, Joel. We've already been having a conversation. Who else? There was somebody else here, I believe. Somebody, Mike as well. So make sure you guys say what's up in the chat. And if you got any questions, of course, put it in the chat and we'll talk about it. So let's start. Yesterday was the Carlos Mendoza press conference. Again, you can win or lose a press conference. It doesn't really matter what he does on the bench, and what he does manager-wise, in-game management decisions. But at least we got a guy that wanted to be here, right? We knew for a fact that Craig Counsell did not want to be here, and that was kind of obvious once we heard about other candidates being serious candidates for the Mets managerial position, and obviously Mendoza got the job. I do like the fact that the Mets, or what Carlos Mendoza, what he talked about, again, you hear the cliches, you want to win championships, you want to, I want to be here, want to make the fans happy, the fans are going to let you know, and blah, 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 all that stuff. But what I like, one thing I always like to hear from any press conference is to talk about accountability. I think that's important. He said it there wasn't a question asked about that. He actually brought that up in his opening statement. He wanted accountability. He wants accountability. And I think that's important. And he's a guy he's a baseball guy, right? He's been in the dugout for many years. It took him many years to get this job. He worked his way up, which is always a good sign for a guy who's a first-time manager. He worked his way up. And he seems confident in what he's talking about. He has respect around baseball, especially amongst the players. He's what he did with the Yankees, besides just being a bench coach, he dealt with defensive positioning. He dealt with a lot of the analytical side of defensive metrics and everything like that. So I do like the fact that he talked about accountability, that he's a guy that is not going to he's a guy, he was the bad cop for Aaron Boone's good cop. Like, Aaron Boone was the good guy with the players, and even though Carlos Mendoza says he's gonna be very communicative towards the players and care for the players, he's also going to be a guy that is not going to take anything. Like, he's going to have his players back. And there's a few things that the Mets organization as a whole, I think, didn't have, and that was accountability. And it didn't seem like anybody had anybody's back last year in particular. So, and yeah, right wing, absolutely. Cliches are accountability. They say that all the time, but they also say, oh, I'm here to win world championships. I know the fans are, passionate and they care, and we want to win for the fans, everything like that. That's fine. But when he openly says accountability and nobody asks him specifically about that, I like that he says that. And he sounds like the guy that means what he says. Right? He's not scared to say anything. You saw how emotional he got. Look, this guy worked from the bottom and worked his way up. This wasn't Aaron Boone, having no in-dugout experience and being an analyst on ESPN and getting a job, right? This is a guy that worked his way up, right? And he talked about Willie Randolph being and if you listen to what he said, and this was obviously smart by his people, whoever helped him out with what he's going to talk about for his press conference, talked about Willie Randolph and did not bring up Aaron Boone. And that, obviously, that was a shot at the Yankees, and a little bit of a, hey, listen, I know Mets history a little bit, even though we know that somebody told him about his people. But still, the fact of the matter is, he talked about Willie Randolph being a big help for him throughout his years as coaching. And obviously that was related with the Mets because Willie was a coach at one point, a manager at one point, and he didn't bring up Aaron Boone, who he was under for the last 4 years. So, well, Mike, I think that's silly. Now, maybe you're right about Soto. It's not that possible that they probably be on Soto. I think there's a lot of other issues the Mets got to worry about, in particular pitching and bullpen. But they'll be in on Otani. I'm not going to sit here and tell you the Mets are the favorites, but I'm telling you right now, guys, Otani is going to the team that gives him the most money. You don't want to believe that he can go anywhere except the Dodgers. That's the problem. Whoever gives them the most money, he's going to. And I'm not talking about if a really bad team figures out, say, hey, let's get Otani just to get payday, he's going to go there. I'm talking about teams that have a chance of winning, that being contenders, is because of the fact that the New York Mets and other teams, the Dodgers, the Giants, teams that are willing to spend the most money. I'm telling you right now, Otani's going to take the most money, and it really doesn't matter where it is. If it's a team that can contend in 2024 and beyond, he's going to take the most money. It is very, very, very rare that a player takes less money to go to a place, to a particular team. And usually when that happens is when they go to a team that they were currently on. Like Aaron Judge took $50 million less than what he was offered to go back to the Yankees, right? That's the only time this stuff happens, right? The Angels, Otani's not going back to the Angels. Even if the Angels offered him a decent contract, they're not going to come anywhere close to the biggest offer. And Joel, the reason why Soto, I didn't say it's impossible. I said it's more unlikely that the Mets go after Soto than, say, other teams. Because let's be honest, if you want to trade for Juan Soto, you also got to give him a big contract, right? So you're giving up multiple prospects and a big contract. When I talk about Otani or any other big time free agent, it's only money. You're not hurting your prospects, your farm system. And again, they talked about, listen, I'm on board for getting Soto. Look, I'm not a prospect hugger. I can care less about any of these prospects. They mean nothing to me. All right. They absolutely mean nothing to me. Right now, they're assets that can be traded. I think there's too many times, and I think it was a huge problem with Billy Epler, is that he was so concerned about keeping his prospects that when he had opportunity to get the player he wanted, he didn't because he wanted to save prospects. Well, Dimitri, that's a great question. It is a great question. But he is also one of the best hitters in baseball. And if he never pitches again, right? He's getting that $500 million contract because he can do both. Let's say he comes back and he doesn't pitch the same way he did, say, this year. Right? And say he's a middle rotation type of guy, a number 3. Like his best day, he can pitch as an ace, but on a regular basis, he'll pitch as a number 3. How many teams have a really solid number 3, right? And yeah, that money that you paid would actually be because he's a really good pitcher as well, but he's a 300 hitter who hits 40 plus home runs and between 90 and 100 plus RBIs, right? You know, there's people that are willing to give Pete Alonso $300 million, and he's nearly the same age as as Otani, and Alonso does one thing. Even if Otani is a solid number 3, he already does more than most players do. Yeah, Mike, I don't necessarily believe that 100%. Like, if he does go on the West Coast, yeah, the Dodgers are going to go hard after him for sure. But again, I heard this so many times before, right? Wasn't Scherzer supposed to be a Dodger? Every single day, that's all I heard. Dodger, Dodger, Dodger. And not even within that week that it was going to happen, the Mets got him. So I don't necessarily believe that. Now, do I think the Mets are the favorite to land Otani? No, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that. But don't think for a second the San Francisco Giants aren't going to go hard after him. You know, so the Dodgers aren't the end all be all. I think too many people are just fascinated by that because that's the easy way to go out. And that's a silly way to think about it. Now, the Dodgers the favorite? Of course they are. But again, if there's a team out there that gives the biggest offer, he's going there. As long as it's a team that's within contention, he's going there. All right. There's no way the players union is going to allow him and his agent to take less money to go somewhere else. It's just not going to happen. The players union was pissed off about Judge taking $50 million less than what he was offered from the Padres to go back to the Yankees. But it wasn't much of a big story because he went back to his original team, right? Otani's not going back to the Angels. If he takes $50, $60 million less to go to the Dodgers, that's going to be a huge problem for the union because all that does is hurt the overall concept of free agency because any team can go to any free agent now and say, Otani took less money to come here to go to that team. Why can't you take less money to come here? That's going to be a huge problem in free agency. Rob, do you think the Blue Jays have well, the Blue Jays talked about that. I don't know how serious he is. I mean, if he's going to go East Coast, is he really going to go to Toronto? I mean, no offense to Toronto, but it is Canada. Like, it's the furthest thing. It's the furthest country to his country, and it's a little further up north. I don't know if he would do that. Unfortunately, I know, again, the Mets have Senga. The Blue Jays have Kikuchi, the Dodgers with Japanese players, yeah, they had them in the past, but, like the only thing the Dodgers have going for them is location. Like they're getting very old, the Dodgers. Very old. And there's no reason why I think that the Dodgers, I think the Dodgers had a really good year, but I think a lot of people were shocked by that, to be honest with you. All right, let me just check. Hold on, guys. Daniel, I give Otani whatever it needs to take. Honestly, it's only money, and it's not going to stop you from doing anything else. It's just not. Cohen already proved that, right? He got rid of Verlander and Scherzer and basically coughed up all the money to get prospects. He doesn't care about the money. Hold on. Well, Joel, you could say that though, but Yelich, Nimmo actually over the last 2 seasons played over 145 games. So, and by the way, I wrote down on purpose Nimmo's year, 2023 year, and Yelich's 2023 year. Very similar. Very similar. Right? I'm gonna give you the stats really quick. The stats that are pretty good that people care about. And then I'm going to make you choose. Yeah, Ken, I agree. The Dodgers have been good for a decade, but they also have been team that has been woefully underperformed, right? Honestly. There's teams that's been better than the Dodgers. And I'm not saying the Mets. Believe me, I'm not. But there's other teams that have been more successful than the Dodgers. The Dodgers are choke artists. Let's be honest. I've said that for years. If it wasn't for the 2020 pandemic, the Dodgers wouldn't have won the World Series either. They don't win in a 162-game season. They fail every year. They choke every year. Every year. Every year. Every year. They are one of the best teams in baseball almost every year, and they fail every year. Now, they made the playoffs. That obviously that's priority number one. You get a chance to win when you're in the playoffs. So there's nothing to say about that. Again, I'm not saying the Dodgers are not the favorite, but you think that it's the Dodgers or bust, it's silly for Otani. Joel, you ain't freaking kidding, buddy. I understand that, Joel. I understand that. But again, this is going to be year 4 of Steve Cohen. Remember, he took over a farm system and a team that was in shambles. I think we can all agree with that, right? The Wilpons basically ran this team to the ground and this whole organization into the ground, knowing that they were going to sell this team. So that's understandable. So, and again, if everybody doesn't understand why Steve Cohen spent the amount of money he did, you're really not paying attention to the Mets organization. People were mad that, oh, look at the Mets being the highest payroll. You got to remember, going into the last 2 seasons, the Mets really didn't have a rotation. The Mets didn't have a lot of quality players. The Mets didn't have a farm system. So the only way to get quality players here was to spend a ton of money. I think people forget about that aspect. And that's the whole understanding. Robert, I agree with you about the Giants, by the way. The whole aspect, and this is where the national media is such idiots, because they don't understand the inner workings of the Mets. If you're a Mets fan and paid attention over the last 5 or 6 years, how bad this organization was run prior to Steve Cohen taking over, with all the years that the Mets were bad, they had top 10 draft picks, worst top 12, and they couldn't draft well at all. And that's been the problem. As much as we killed Billy Epler, he had 2 outstanding drafts. Outstanding drafts. And that's important. And now that the Mets cannot spend, now they're going to have to spend money to help this rotation out 100%. But they also have options, because if you look at the farm system right now, the Mets have an abundance of infielders. there's at some point you have to figure out what prospects you're going to keep, infielders you're going to keep in your farm system. You can't keep them all. It makes no sense, and you're hurting your team to keep them all. If you're going to keep McNeil at second base, somebody's going to play third base. It's either going to be Beatty or Mauricio. Choose one. Don't, if you want to fight it, have them fight it out at spring training, fine. That's fine. But you also got Jet Williams. You also got Luis Angel Acuna. You also got Vientos. How many of these guys you're going to keep around here? You just gave McNeil a 4-year deal. If Mauricio and Beatty, one of them going to be a third baseman, they're going to be here for the next 6 years, 5-6 years. You got Lindor for here for another 7. Most likely, we don't really have a first baseman prospect. So say Pete Alonso is going to be here. You already got your star catchers. So you got Parada, you got Acuna, you got Vientos, you got Jet Williams. Where are you putting these guys? If you have to decide if these guys are going to be part of your organization, part of your roster over the next year or two, or they're going to be assets to use to make your Major League Baseball team better in a trade. You can't keep on holding on to these prospects, or you're going to end up like the Yankees. Or you're going to end up like other teams that hold on to these prospects. Now, the difference with the Yankees actually gave most of their prospects chances. They just fell apart. They weren't actually good. Yeah, but Mike, it's not. See, this is not a building year. All right? We're not rebuilding. If we're rebuilding, trade Alonso yesterday. Let's be honest. Let's be honest about that. All right? It's not. I'm sorry. When an 84-win team makes the World Series, trust me, you're not as far as you think. All you got to do is make the playoffs. Anybody can win. Yeah, Joel, that's great. Where is Jet Williams playing? Where is he playing? I don't care how good he is. Like, I'm sick and tired of these prospects because Brett Beatty, he hits, he comes to the majors, he doesn't hit, he's not so good on the field. They send him back to AAA, he starts hitting home runs. So, is he a quadruple A player? Like, I'm so sick and tired of these guys. Like, if you give me minor league stats, you're wasting your time. All right? Is that the minor league stats get you an opportunity at the big leagues? Absolutely. But if you don't perform now, Jet Williams hasn't been here yet. So we'll see. Well, Joel, I bet you said that about a lot of minor leaguers too. I mean, Greg Jeffries was supposed to be good, right? Billy Beane was supposed to be a great player, right? Fernando Martinez, Lastin's Millage, they were all supposed to be great, right? We talk about these prospects like they're always a guarantee. And then that one player, like, here's the problem. People are like, why would you trade for Juan Soto? Well, the guy's 25 years old. If you might be lucky that one of your prospects might actually end up close to what Juan Soto is. That's why you make that trade. Because he's 25 years old. You're not trading for a 30-year-old who you have to give a contract to. You're trading for a 25-year-old who's going to be 25 and give a big contract to. Big difference. All right, so just so you know, guys, we talked about the Mendoza press conference, the 40-man protection. The Mets put Alex Ramirez on the 40-man to protect him from the Rule 5 draft that comes up next month. Yeah, Alex Escobar, even Carlos Gomez. You know, he was a good player, but he wasn't what he was projected to be. Yeah, Joel, that's fine, but he had an awful year. That okay. But what are we supposed to do about that? He's still a top 15 prospect. Like he is. You know, he had one bad year, so you're just going to throw him out? So if he has one bad year, that means you're telling me that he can't be traded. So the Mets have no use for him, and another team doesn't have use for him. No, I'm saying is that if you're gonna stop, say if the Padres come to you and says we want Jet Williams, we want one of your top. Say they say they want Jet Williams. Let's see. Jet Williams. I don't know. Pick one of the pitchers. Pick one of our best pitching prospects. Scott, Christian, Hamill, whichever one. And throw in another top 15 prospect. You're going to say no to that? We'll be lucky if Jet Williams turns out close to Juan Soto. I'm sorry. Nobody's untouchable. Anybody in the minor leagues is not untouchable right now. I'm sorry. I agree, Mike. And that's the problem. And that's why I brought up the Yankees, because Cashman was gun shy to give up his prospects. Remember, when they were almost able, when the Houston got Cole and the Yankees needed pitching, if Cole would have been on the Yankees, there was a possibility the Yankees could have won the World Series. They could have beat the Astros. Same thing with the Verlander situation. That was a little bit more. I don't know if the Yankees were all in on that, but they were involved. They let him go to the Astros. And I think that's where we are when it comes to not trading your prospects for a player you need. The Mets, guess what? Need outfield help. You're trading for a 25-year-old, not a 30-year-old or a 31-year-old. Joel, and I do that. Well, see, Suarez. Yeah, see, I don't think now. Again, I do that trade. Honest to God. That's no sweat off my shoulders, because there's a pretty good chance that any one of those position players you're trading are not going to be better than Juan Soto. Like, let's be fair. Let's be fair. Acuna can be a good player. Hamill and Stewart, yeah, it sucks. Like, I like those pitching prospects. But again, who are they going to be? And if you can do that trade, I do that in a heartbeat, because you know what, you keep Christian Scott, you keep Mike Vasil. Those two guys, are pretty good as well. That are possibly, Christian Scott was one of our best pitchers in the minors, and Mike Vasil is on his way up to the major leagues. Like, he has a chance of winning the 5th spot here, possibly a bullpen spot. So that's where we are when it comes to that. Yeah, easy. That's silly. That doesn't make sense. Like Soto, yeah, sure, maybe. Max, how do you know Acuna Jr. is better than Soto? You don't know that. He's not even better than his brother. So, come on. Yeah, Joel, that's a great trade. Listen, if the Padres want that, you can't say no. If you say no, I tell you right now, David Stearns is going to be on my bad side right away. Yeah, of course. Look, if you're not willing to give up top prospects, any top prospect, by the way, there is not one. Because listen, Jet Williams is our number one prospect. He is a shortstop by draft. When he was drafted, he's a shortstop. Yeah, he can probably play second base or third base. If you're looking at the Mets infield, where's he playing? You just gave McNeil a 4-year deal. Mauricio or Beatty are probably going to be a third baseman. Now, some say that Jet Williams is athletic enough to put him in center field. Okay, great. So now you're giving Nimmo $25 million to play left field. I'm sorry. Nobody's untouchable in this farm system. I'm sorry, they're not. You made those trades to have abundance of prospects so you can use in a trade. Now, I don't believe the Mets are going to go after at least be the favorites to get Soto. Will they try? Why not? You wouldn't be doing your job. So that's where we are. And let's go to the next one. The Mets and Rays trade talks when you hear that, you hear Tyler Glasnow. Well, that wasn't what the Mets were talking about with the Rays. They were talking about Manuel Margot. And the reason why was because of the fact that the Rays are looking for roster spots to protect some of their young players that could be in the Rule 5 draft that are not protected. So they're looking for roster space, 40-man roster room, and that's why they were looking to trade Manuel Margot. Now, Margot didn't have a good season. He played 99 games, only a couple of home runs, wasn't very good. But, again, people get scared. Like, oh, my God, the Mets are trading for Manuel Margot. What are they doing? He's not a terrible player. This guy can be a bench player. This guy can be a bat off the bench. This guy can be a fourth outfielder. Yeah, exactly, Joel. And again, this isn't like, oh, let's get Manuel Margot and put him in left field and let's go with our outfield. No, that's not the case. The Mets probably thought they can get a very fair a deal where they probably don't have to give up anything. It might be money, cash considerations. It might be a very low level prospect for Manuel Margot. It's a low risk, high reward situation. It's a fair trade. The Rays are looking for 40-man roster openings to protect some of their players from the Rule 5. And the Mets get a quality number 4, fourth outfielder. If you don't understand baseball, you need those guys. You need a fourth and fifth outfielder. You need guys that can step in if there's an injury or give a guy a day off. That's what it is. Yeah, Mike, but this isn't trading for Tyler Glasnow, which I would not do. You're trading basically nothing to get a quality fourth, fifth outfielder that can, give guys days off and come off the bench as a pinch hitter in a spot. Jay, you're absolutely wrong about that. Didn't we just have an owner's lockout because of the fact the players union was complaining that the owners were colluding to not give players long-term deals and older players a lot of money? The players union has every right to do that. Because not only if Otani put it this way, if Otani takes $60 million less to go to the Dodgers and say the Mets, the Cubs, the Giants offered him $60 million more than what he signed, that's a problem. Because all you're doing is hurting your other union members. Yeah, Joel, but the Rays fleece everyone, but you're not getting the Mets are getting Manuel Margot for a top 20 prospect. All right? Not even close. You're going to get a lower level prospect, probably some lower level pitcher that, that is not very good. And the Rays are going to take that because they always take pitching. And if he turns into something, he turns into something. Let him beat the Yankees. They're not in our division. Who cares? Mike, that's fine. They can steal our hidden gems. But that hidden gem is going to be a lower level prospect that's not going to help us until 2026 and 2027. Again, you're looking at it to the Rays are trying to fleece. This isn't Tyler Glasnow trade. This isn't Evan Longoria trade. Come on. Like, we're not looking at it like that. Mario, that sounds nice, right? All right, guys. So that was the trade talk that the Mets were talking about over the last 24 hours or so. And maybe they're still talking about that. Maybe that trade, there hasn't been much about it, except that I heard about it earlier today. That's what happened because the Rays were looking for 40-man roster open spots to protect some of their players for the Rule 5. So the Otani short-term deal, we heard a little bit about that over the coming days, that he was trying that there's a possibility he might take a 2-year deal with with an opt-out after the first year. I don't know how true that is. I think that's a little scary for him because if he has a bad year or doesn't come back and pitch well after the second year, who's really going to give him at 31, 32 years old a humongous deal, he's going to get a long-term deal. I hardly doubt that, but that was talked about over the last couple of days, so I thought I'd bring that up. Yeah, I understand that about Gilbert and everything like that, but also you're going to have to give up a lot to get him as well. When there's a ton of pitching on the free agent market, I think it's silly to start trading for pitchers when you got abundance of, and now Gilbert's, he's a 1 or a 2, absolutely. But you're going to trade multiple because he has a couple of years more control. You're going to give an arm and a leg just to get him. And when you got top pitching process, when you got a top pitcher in Yamamoto and other quality starters on the free agent market, it really doesn't make sense to make a trade for like a Gilbert or a Burns. The only way that happens is if the Mets lose out on Yamamoto. Then all hands are on deck. Because if the Mets lose out on Yamamoto, there is no doubt in my mind they're going to make a trade for a top of the line starting pitcher. If they see Glass now as that, which I don't believe, a Burns, a Gilbert, they're going to have to look at that. Well, Joel, in that situation, I wouldn't do it if the Mets get Yamamoto. But if the Mets lose out on Yamamoto, you have to think about it. Honestly, you have to. Honestly, have to. They'll probably, I think you can take out Mauricio and put in one of the pitching prospects because they would probably want a pitcher back as well in that return. So Jet Williams, top 10 pitcher prospect, and Acuna. Listen, if you lose out on Yamamoto, you have to think about that. Gilbert could be a top line starter for the next 2 or 3 years because I think he's under control for 3 more years, maybe 4, if I'm not mistaken. All right, so the Brewers fire sale. I just talked about Corbin Burns. There was a report that came out yesterday that the Brewers are willing to trade anybody on their roster, and that is their closer Williams as well. There it is, obviously Corbin Burns, obviously Christian Yelich, and I was going back and forth before the stream with Joel about the Mets trading for Corbin Burns, but if they can add Yelich to that package with Burns and take on Yelich's contract, you could put Yelich in left field for the next couple of years. And again, I'm going to go over his numbers in a little bit and compare them to who the Mets currently have. And that's what we're talking about here when it comes to Yelich. Okay. Yes, he has a bad back. Understandable. Right? If you're not going to be willing to take it, listen, I'll take Yelich if it tells me that I can save one prospect from a total package to get Corbin Burns. If it takes 3 top prospects to get Corbin Burns by itself, if you can take away one prospect and give 2 top prospects along with taking Yelich, you do that trade. Now, this is if the Mets don't get Yamamoto. That's when you really have to look at trading for top line starters. Yeah, easy. I understand that. But again, this is not trading just for Yelich. If you get Burns back in the deal and it saves you a top prospect, that's a different story. And that's what I was talking about, Joe. Maybe you misunderstood when we were chatting back and forth. It wasn't about Yelich alone. I'm not doing that. That's stupid. Like, I think that's what you thought I meant. No. I mean, I'm crazy, but I'm not that crazy. All right? I'm not trading anything to bring Yelich. I was talking about bringing in Yelich, taking on that contract to save a prospect from that package with Corbin Burns. Yeah, I think that's what it was. Okay, so we are on the same page with that. If it brings Corbin Burns, you can deal with Yelich for 2-3 years and pray that his back holds up. If it doesn't, whatever. We don't have a left fielder as it is. If Yelich works out for 2-3 years, fine. The last 2 seasons, he played over 140 games. And I'm going to give you his numbers. Actually, I'm going to give you his numbers first. Yelich's numbers. He played in 144 games. No, Yelich by himself, no. He played 144 games. He batted .278. 19 home runs, 76 RBIs, an on-base percentage of .380 with an OPS of .818. Okay? Now, there's only one Met in the outfield that did that. And it's very similar numbers. 274, 24 home runs, 68 RBIs, a 363 on-base percentage with an 829 OPS. That was Brandon Nimmo. Very similar numbers, right? Brandon Nimmo, leadoff hitter, perfectly fine, right? I'm not a big Nimmo fan. I think he got overpaid, but, he basically did what Yelich did. Average annual value per year, they make about the same amount. Obviously, Nimmo, I believe, I think Yelich is 31 years old. Nimmo's what, 30? So it's not much of a difference, right? You can't tell me if it helps us get Corbin Burns, putting Yelich in left field and just hope that he works out and it saves you a top prospect in that package, it's worth the risk because Corbin Burns is going to be one of your top starters and he's one of the better pitchers in baseball. So that's where we are when it comes to that. Now, this is not Yelich by itself. If it's Yelich by itself, that's stupid. But if it saves us a top prospect to get Burns, you have to do it. Now, this is if you don't get Yamamoto. I'm telling you right now, if Yamamoto is not a Met, and it's going to happen rather quickly, I don't think it's going to be a long term. It's going to be a long-term period. Remember, it was the day he's posted, which should be in the next day or two, he got 45 days to sign a contract with a team or he goes back to Japan. It's going to happen. It's going to happen before the winter meetings. So what is that? 2 weeks away, 2.5 weeks away? It's going to happen rather quickly. So there's no pitching. That's probably maybe a couple of small, middle of the road pitchers might come off the market, but there is no big pitching arm that's going to get traded until Yamamoto signs. Because the teams that lose out on Yamamoto are going to have to make moves. That's where I see it. So watch out for the Brewers because it's not just Yelich. There might be a couple of bullpen arms as well. Fire sale in Milwaukee, especially with Woodruff going down for the year. They're probably looking to sell off what they can and get top prospects back. So, all right, we talked about this a little in the chat. Can the Mets get Juan Soto? Of course they can. If the Mets are willing to give up what it takes, you do it for a 25-year-old. Nobody should be on the table. Nobody should be getting on the table. And I agree with Mothman 100%. Steve Cohen can get anybody he wants. Steve Cohen has a way of getting somebody in a room and getting them to believe that this is where they want to be. Max Scherzer had no interest. I know he was older, but Max Scherzer had no interest, one, coming to the Mets, and two, coming back to the East Coast. He wanted to stay with the Dodgers or the West Coast. He got Scherzer in the room and made it happen. Don't think for a second he will not do that with any free agent, including Otani. Juan Soto. Juan Soto can be had by any team. If you're willing to give up top prospects and any of them, which I believe some teams might not. And everybody who believes that the Yankees are going to be the favorites for Juan Soto, you got another thing coming. Because I'm telling you right now, yes, the Padres want pitching prospects, but if they don't X for Dominguez or Volpe in a package, at least one of them, along with pitching prospects, something's going on there. It doesn't make sense. And that's the point. Now, I think the Cubs have a pretty good shot to get Soto. The Giants are going to try their best to get a big name player. If they lose out on Otani or Yamamoto, they might go after Soto. And those teams have better farm system than the Yankees. Yeah, but we know why Matz turned Cohen down, right? Matz did not want to be in New York anymore, right? Matz didn't want to deal with New York anymore. He was done with it. A New Yorker who was done with New York. That's the way I felt. Yeah, Mothman, but did we really whiff? I don't think we did. Carlos Correa was a different scenario. Cohen was willing to sign him. But when the medicals came, it was an issue. And I can't blame the Mets for that. It sucked. And John, exactly. You can extend Corbin Burns. That's the other thing. I agree with you, man. You know, I don't think it does. Look, I think money matters. 100%. I'm telling you guys, Otani's not going to take less money. He's going to the highest bidder. And again, maybe Steve Cohen might not be the highest bidder. I find that very hard to believe. Because if you now, I do think the Mets are more in on Yamamoto than they are on Otani. But the Mets are going to make an offer to Otani. It would be malpractice if they don't do that. All right. So what else we got? Yamamoto posting. We just talked about it. According to Baseball Night in New York, the next day or two, I think by the end of whatever it is, Thursday or Friday, he's going to be posted. So it's going to be a very crazy few days with all these rumors popping up. The bullpen arms to watch for, I actually Googled all the bullpen arms. There's a ton of them. A lot of them. I mean, there's a shitload. You know, you got Jordan Hicks. You know, you got what's his name? Liam Hendricks. You got Josh Hader, which I don't believe the Mets are going to go after. You got Will Smith, who's won 3 championships in a row. You got David Robinson. You got Matt Burns, Nick Martinez, Aaron Loop, Matt Moore, Andrew Chafin, Colin McHugh. I'm just picking up guys that I think the Mets would be interested in. Reynaldo Lopez, Wandy Peralta, who was with the Yankees, who had a really good year. Jordan Hicks. I think I said him. Yeah, there's a lot of them, but I'm trying to think. Yeah, there's a lot of guys, but not a lot I like. Let's see. Yeah, it's not a lot. Not a lot. So, you know, there's a lot of pitching, there's a lot of bullpen arms. And again, in my opinion, bullpen arms are fickle. Bullpen arms are one year you can have the best bullpen with the same names. The next year you can bring back the same pitchers in the bullpen and they don't have close to the same season. So that's where I am with that. I see it as this. Get arms that you think will be good. If you think they're going to fit well with this bullpen, get them. I don't care if he wasn't very good last year, but had good years before that. Well, after David Bednar, you got to trade for him. And it's not going to be easy to trade for him. You know, we have a closer. I don't see us trading for another closer. Yeah, he can pitch the 8th inning. But to trade multiple top prospects, now again, I'm not one of those guys to hold prospects for a long time. If you're going to keep them, play them. That's the way I see it. If you're not going to play them, use them as assets. Now, could the Mets get Bednar? Sure. Depending on what what the Mets are willing to give up, we'll see. You know, Bednar's probably going to be on the market, but I don't see the Mets making that a top priority, especially when there's a ton of arms in the free agent market that you can get. Nico, because Nightingale is silly. Nightingale is wrong almost every single time. And I love how people are like, oh, look, the Mets have no shot because look what Nightingale said. Now you want to believe Nightingale? When all the stupid other rumors that he threw up over the last couple of years and people didn't believe him and thought he was a joke, but you want to believe this. It's silly, right? Not one other reporter has come out and said the Mets aren't in on Otani. You would think if a report came out that the Mets, that's a big story. If the Mets are 100% out of Otani, or Otani doesn't want to go to the Mets, you don't think that would have been a top story almost every reporter would want to put out there? Even if it was fake rumor, it's clickbait. Every reporter would have took it. So not hearing any other reporter talk about it, and it's been very quiet on the Mets front with Otani, tells me that they're more in than everybody else believes. Because one thing for sure, and I think everybody can agree with this, Met fan or not, when the Mets are in on a player, you usually don't hear much about it, right? When the Mets traded for Chris Bassett, now, again, that wasn't a free agent, but when they traded for Chris Bassett, nobody heard about it until that same day where the Mets were talking about a trade for a starting pitcher and nobody knew who it was. And then the news came out that they got Chris Bassett. Same thing happened with Marte, Escobar, and Canna when they signed them around 8, 9 o'clock at night and nobody heard about that they were in on these guys, and they signed all three of them within an hour. Same thing with Scherzer. There wasn't a lot of rumors that the Mets and Scherzer were close on a deal, or they were negotiating, or they were talking. All we heard was the Mets had no shot to get Scherzer. He wants to be a Dodger or on the West Coast. All of a sudden, the Mets are in on Scherzer. The negotiations are heating up. And then the Mets sign Scherzer. Knowing that it's so quiet and you didn't get not one other reporter other than Nightingale saying that the Mets are 100% out on Otani and they're pivoting just to Yamamoto makes absolutely no sense. Even if you don't think you're the favorite to land Otani, there's no reason why the Mets can't give a huge offer to Otani and make him say no. Yeah, I mean, Singer as well with the Royals. You know, there's a lot of guys. Again, the bullpens are fickle, guys. You got to remember that. Right? The Mets had one of the better bullpens in 2022. And again, different names in 2023. And Diaz wasn't there. But you got to remember, Aaron Loop went from the Mets with one of the best relievers in baseball, went to the Angels, and was one of the worst. You got to remember, bullpens are a hit or miss every year. I think with Stearns, and I think he's going to do this just because one thing Stearns does well in running teams, and he saw it with the Brewers, they have good pitching. The Brewers had a good bullpen and really good starting pitching. So that's where we are with that. Frank, we are developing within. And I think we keep on missing the fact that Nimmo, McNeil, and Alonso were products of the Mets farm system. That's already your core. You got to put other people around them. You can't just use, wait for every prospect to be ready. You're never going to win that way. All right. Again, another top 10 payroll team won the World Series. You got to spend money as well when you have a core. If you believe the Mets core is Nimmo, McNeil, and Alonso for the next 5 years, because McNeil contract is up in 3 years, but say a 5-year window, then you have your core to work with. Now, I put Lindor a part of that core because he has a long-term deal as well. So Lindor, Alonso, McNeil, and Lindor. That is your core already. 3 out of the 4 were from your farm system. Put teams around them. Put players around them. You don't always have to worry about, you can still develop. And again, you sign free agents doesn't stop you from developing your farm. We have that mindset that we're not developing our farm. The Mets developed Nimmo, McNeil, and Alonso. That is your core. You have Francisco Alvarez, who is now your catcher. He is your farm system. Your third baseman is either going to be Mauricio or Beatty. I think we have enough core guys from our farm system to work with. You have a lot of assets in the minors in your farm system to make a trade if you need it. And that's including at the deadline. Now you have the money to work with to put those guys around that core. right? If you keep on continue to wait for prospects just to come up, you're never going to win that way because you'll be waiting for too long. Because the time your prospects that you believe are going to be ready, Alonso's 35 years old, Nimmo's 34, McNeil's 36, Lindor's 34, and then you got to start the cycle over again. Yeah, well, Frank, I agree with you when it comes to pitching. I think the Mets had now remember, the Mets tried to develop pitching, and it just happened not to work out with, DeGrom and Scherzer, Syndergaard. Even though they traded for Syndergaard, he got through the farm system. Syndergaard, Matz, Harvey, right? That was supposed to be a rotation that should have been together for 10 years because they were all young with Matz as well, right? And Fulmer before we traded them for Cespedes. It didn't work out. And I'd rather have everyday players, and pitching prospects are important. And I think that's what the Mets are trying to do. The Mets haven't traded pitching prospects. They're 4 or 5 guys that are almost all of them are in the top 20 now. Most are in the top 15. They're all there. So they're developing them. The fact of the matter is, you have a core that came up through your farm system in Alonso, McNeil, and Nimmo. That's 3 out of your 9, or let's say 8 of your roster. Lindor is your other one. He's part of your core because you gave him a long-term deal. That's 4 out of 8. So you got to put 4 more guys, and you got Alvarez, so that's 5. Mauricio Bay is going to be 6. So you only need 2 or 3 other guys to put around, which is your core for the next at least 4 or 5 years. What else are we developing besides pitching? Now, I'm not saying trade every position prospect you have. You'll keep a couple of them, absolutely. But you use those assets when you need a player. If it comes towards the deadline where the Mets are struggling, say on the offense, and say whoever their left fielder is, it's not Juan Soto. Say if it's somebody else and it's not working out, or if it's Marte not working out, and you need an outfielder, and it's a good bat, you can't be afraid to trade those guys. Joel, exactly. Yeah. Isringhausen, Saberhagen, Wilson. I mean, come on. You know what I'm saying? So I see it as this. The most important thing is you have a core. Alvarez is going to be a catcher. One of your top prospects in Mauricio Urabeti are going to be a third baseman. So your entire infield is from your farm system except for Lindor. And then you put Nimmo in that mix. So all you need is 1 or 2 extra players, maybe 3, from outside the organization to work with. Yeah, but the 3 players away, again, what happens if your infield prospects develop a lot better than your outfield prospects? You have no room for them. So what do you do with them? They develop, you think they're ready, but there's nowhere to play them. Now, in the Mets case, you hope that Drew Gilbert, Ryan Clifford, Alex Ramirez develop where you want them to develop because they're going to be in need. They're already in need. I think Drew Gilbert is going to get a chance to make this roster. He's going to get a chance to win the left field or right field position. 100%, in my opinion. Power, I think the Mets are going to be in on both of them. I think Burns is more likely. Frank, money's not an issue. Soto is never going to cost too much. He's 25 years old. All right, guys. So it's the end of another Mets Hot Stove. Hopefully next time I speak to you on Friday for Mets Hot Stove, Yamamoto will be posted. We'll get a lot more rumors. We're heading closer to Thanksgiving. That's where when things start to heat up because you get closer to the winter meetings. There's a lot of talk that Otani wants to sign before the winter meetings, which will make the winter meetings even more crazier because after Otani, when the best free agent goes off the market, That's when everything starts to happen. So that's where we are with the Mets. Mendoza had a good press conference, talked about accountability, talked about working his way up from the bottom all the way up to the top. I love guys like that. He's been in the dugout with experience, with bench coach. As a bench coach, he managed in the Winter League, which, if you don't think is important, have you watched the Winter Leagues? Have you ever paid attention to the Winter Leagues in the Dominican Republic and other Latin American countries? It's insane. It means a lot over there. So he has managed. He's dealt with fan bases that are absolutely insane in the winter leagues. Trust me, it's going to be crazy. No, Mike, it's not about trading all the kids. It's about trading a certain amount to get what you need, because you can't use all these kids. You can't put 15 guys in a lineup. You can't put this ain't softball. You can't put 15 guys on the field. I like to have 4 outfielders. That'd be great. But you can't. I like to have 7 infielders, but you can't. The fact of the matter is, I'm going to tell you guys right now, if you don't believe that some of these prospects are going to get traded, you're not paying attention. You can still have a farm system and develop a farm system if you trade 3 or 4 of them to get the player you need to help this team. And not just next year, but in the coming years. You trade for Juan Soto, you're going to sign him to a long-term deal. That's a 10-year deal, most likely, who's 25 years old. Right? You trade for Corbin Burns, you're going to try to extend him for 4, 5, 6 years. Yeah, in time, Mike, but you got to start making moves now. All right? Everybody's going to be another year older. You got to use the guys that you have in your prime. And if you think 2024 is not a contending year, you're silly. If you don't believe that, you're not paying attention. Because the Mets wouldn't be in on Yamamoto. The Mets wouldn't. I mean, you might as well trade Pete Alonso. What's the point? If you're not going to be ready by 25, 26, you're going to have Alonso at 32, 33 years old. It makes no sense. So with that said, guys, everybody have a good night. Tomorrow is going to be MLB free agent friend. Let's see. Will it be? Let's see. Let me check. All right. So tomorrow is going to be MLB free agent frenzy. We're going to go over all of baseball with all the free agents available. We're going to talk all about that. Mike, I do have patience, but the fact of the matter is, you also haven't won in 30 plus years, 37 years. It's a long time. Long time. Like, let's go. It's about time. You don't sign Nimmo to an 8-year deal, Lindor to a 10, hopefully Alonso. And, when you want to be good in 25 and 26, 27, these guys are going to be almost at the end of their prime. It makes no sense. The fact of the matter is, you don't have a lot of spots for all these prospects. You gotta pick and choose which ones you think are going to help this roster over the coming years. The others have to be used as assets, especially when it comes to the trade deadline. If you can't be afraid to trade prospects, because you're going to end up like the 2022 Mets, who were afraid to make moves at the deadline, and then you ended up with Vogelback, Naquin, and Ruff. And then you wonder why 2022 was a complete disaster. And then, because of the future, we just assumed 2023 with some of the young kids were going to help, and we ended up winning 75 games. You make the move if it helps you win this year. If the Mets are in a spot where they can make a playoff spot, get a playoff spot at the deadline, they're right in the mix, and you need something, don't be afraid to trade prospects, because it doesn't make sense not to. Because the following year is never given. As a Met fan, you should know that. 2015, the Mets got Cespedes. They almost had it. They made that perfect move. They traded Michael Fulmer, their number 1 overall prospect and top pitching prospect, for Yoenis Cespedes, who was a flawed player, but the perfect player for the Mets in that year. It almost won us a World Series. What did the Mets do in 2016? They did nothing except re-sign Cespedes. Because they just assumed, well, hey, 2015 happened. Why can't it happen in 2016? The Mets didn't do enough. You got to stop doing just enough and then be happy about it. Sometimes you have to make that move to put you over the top. That's where I think the Mets made a mistake in 2022. They were afraid to trade prospects for the right players to help this team. And they didn't. And they just assumed, hey, 2023, look at us. Still got Scherzer. We get Verlander. Great. We got a lot of the same offensive players. And what happened? It was a disaster. You know why? They didn't do enough. You got to stop doing that. Stop putting it off for the following year. Because the following year might not happen. Yeah, great. Jet Williams might come up. Great. Gilbert might come up. But the Mets have Yamamoto. He might blow out his arm. And then what? Your rotation's in shambles already. So those prospects don't mean nothing. They ain't going to help you in the next couple of years because now you're hurt. Do what you need to do and worry about the future when the future happens. Because you got an owner now that's willing to spend money. Right? You already got a core that came up through your farm system. I already gave you the names. Nimmo, McNeil, Alonso, Alvarez. Either Mauricio or Beatty is going to be a third baseman. That's at least 6 guys that are going to be in your lineup that was from your farm system. You don't need all 9 players to be from your farm system. You don't need to. Not a New York team. You don't need to. Do what you have to do to get the players in here to win a championship. Isn't that the point? Not to be, oh, well, we almost made it. No. Let's not have 2015 happen again. Because it's an embarrassment. With that said, guys, everybody have a good night. I'll see you tomorrow. MLB Free Agent Frenzy. Next time Mets Hot Stove is coming up is on Friday. And I'll look to have somebody on with me so we can talk a little bit more about the Mets and what they expect to do in trades and free agency. And what prospects are you willing to trade or are you willing to develop even further? We'll talk about that a little bit more. So with that said, everybody have a good night. Let's go Mets. I'll see you next time, guys. Thank you for tuning in to Mets Hot Stove. And before you leave, hit on that like button. And I'll see you next time, guys. Have a great night.
Meet the Mets, meet the Mets. Step right up and greet the Mets. Bring your kiddies, bring your wife. Guaranteed to have the time of your life because the Mets are really socking the ball, knocking those home runs over the wall. East side, west side, everybody's coming down to meet the METS Mets of New York town. Oh, the butcher and the baker and the people on the streets, where do they go?